Where's the, how do I, technical support? Oh, found it. Yes.
Sorry, he's a big music producer, but unfortunately sometimes, programming, technical stuff might not be there. But oh, he got it.
You got it.
Yeah.
Right then. How are you? Still here? Having fun? Having fun. Yeah. So today we're gonna talk about electronic music. Who's here is a fan of electronic music? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Hi, so I can see you anyway. I've got sunglasses, so I can see anything. But raise your hand. Why do you care? Listen to me, my name is Uncle Sage. I'm coming all the way from New York. I'm the organizer of React NYC. I'm also a fashion icon, a mentor, a music producer, vegan. This is my Twitter handle. Follow me. I won't follow you, though. But you want to follow me. I won't follow you. You want me to follow you, you need to earn this. However, I got only 60 minutes. I mean, you should have 20. Let's talk about our life as programmers, which kind of looks something like this. You wake up early morning, you initialize a variable, you manipulate some arrays, you write some conditional logic, and then you die. But then, life is not fun when that's the only thing you're doing. So, let's see how we can take our core coding skills and make something good out of it. Music and developers, people come to me and ask me, hey, Uncle State, that's what they say, I like to program, I like music, but I wish I could make my own music, but I have no skills of making music whatsoever. And I tell them, let Uncle State show you how it's done. What is electronic music, people? It's music that's been created by electronic instruments. What is an electronic instrument? A computer. That's what it is. So, let's set the stage to make some electronic music. So, I'm gonna use VS Code today. Because people, told me, hey, Uncle State, using Web Store, but we want to see some Visual Studio Code for some reason. So, I'm going to create an index HTML. How many of you have created index HTML before? Good, let's do it the Uncle State way. I'm going to add some dependencies. I'm going to pull two libraries, Ace Editor and a library called Tone.js. Ace Editor is a browser-based code editor. You might be familiar with it. Let's add some styling to the HTML and body. I'm just putting some styles. Then I'm going to create a button. Or maybe let's start with some title. Make music. Yeah. And let's create a button for start. And plain old vanilla JavaScript, because that's the way the uncle like it. Vanilla. Div with ID of editor. Editor. And let's create our own script. So I'm going to create index.js and just make sure that we can render this thing. Yep. Now I'm going to create an index.js file. And let's go back to the 90s and do something like this. This is not the funny part. Yeah. This is the funny part. Technology. Uncle State like technology. And it works. Woo! Yeah. Live coding, baby, live coding. That's the way to live. So, let's talk about a sampler. What is the sampler? Let's learn something. So, we set variables, alright? Like a value, like a string. And then we can use this variable. Make sense? Does it make sense? Alright. Cool. So instead of a variable, let's save a snippet of an audio file. And people, this is a sampler. This is one of the main tools that the electronic music producer use. Let's see how we can do it with code. So I'm going to use this Tone.js library to create a sampler. So I can save some audio snippets into variables. That's it. I'm going to add some variables. Just going to be some MP3 files. Alright, so like a kick, and that's going to be MP3 kick. And let's add some more stuff. Let's add a snare and a hi-hat. And if you never heard those terms, this is like a standard drum kit. And this is a sampler. And when you listen to music, usually, you want to set the volume. So I'm going to use the same folder to create a volume control. And then I'm going to connect my sampler to the volume. And now, hopefully, I can come here and say, hey, sampler, get the kick and kick it. Let's see if it works. Can I get some volume here? Alright? Yeah. So, in coding, you save a variable, you're sampling a piece of data to use later. In life, in music production, you sample a piece of audio so you can use it later. And if you're hanging with Uncle Stan and you want to sample me, I'm going to leave you a piece of my mustache. And then you can sample Uncle State. So we learned about what is a sampler. That's cool. Let's talk about the beats. Let's talk about set interval. Let's say that we just, setting an interval. So every second or so, because this is JavaScript, we can't trust it. We're gonna have something. So let's say you've got an array. Let's say you've got a while loop. Hopefully with some kind of condition. And then you loop over the array and you console log. So what's going to happen is that obviously every second or so, you're going to console log. But I have no control on time here. I'm just running the code and print everything I've got. Is that looks cool? Familiar? Is that look familiar, people? Yeah, yes it is. So let's create a sequence, but instead of sequencing boring numbers, we're gonna sequence some audio files. And it's gonna look like this. I'm creating a sequencer and then an array. Not like this. Yep. 11, 12, 14, 15. We start at 0 because, in music or not music, we're still developers. And I'm going to put a number here. I'm going to explain it later. 8n. And then, let's say that this sequence, think about it as a loop. You're going to see what we can do with it in a second. Now, like the previous example, when you run over a loop, we don't have control over time. I mean, JavaScript running the code, the loop is running and that's it. We need to control time because this is how you make music. And like every time that we need to measure time, like MPH, mile per hour, or kilometer per hour, or whatever, we've got a term for this. In music, we call it the BPM, beat per minute. This is how we measure time. How many beats you've got per minute? How many beats you've got per minute? This is how we do it. So, let's create some kind of a timer here. And it's gonna look like this. I'm gonna come here to my start function. And I'm gonna create some bits. Cool? Nice. Let's take the sequence and move it here. And I totally messed up because I don't know. Uncle Stay doesn't know any keyboard shortcut in Visual Studio Code whatsoever. So inefficient. So now I've got this transport and I can set how many bits I want per minute, and then I can start this transport so I get a bit, and then this sequence, this loop that I created, I'm going to start it as well, and then I'm going to take this kick and I'm just going to put it here. So now I've got a loop, like a while loop, but I can control time. Make sense? Cool. Let's see if it works. Works. Well, that's cool. So now, if this is just an array of numbers, I can write some code. For example, this kick is great. Now let's take the same thing, and I'm going to put an if, because our life as programmers is writing conditional code. And let's say that if this index here, right here, if this index, let's say it's an even number. Make sense? Let's do another sound, like snare. You hear the other sound? Yeah, it's there. So we're getting somewhere with our coding skills. We're looping. We just call it a sequence. We control the time. And we use the variable that we saved before, but instead of alert, we're just playing them. Cool? That's cool. So, if our code can produce music, let's create some live music. So instead of this, I'm gonna use the eval method of JavaScript, eval. I'm gonna initialize this editor that we seen before, the Ace editor. So I'm calling this editor, I'm setting a theme, setting a mode so it knows JavaScript, setting the font size to 20 because Uncle State can't see that well. It's old, but it's still cool. And now I can evaluate the editor get value. So maybe if I do this and go back here, I'll get an editor. And maybe I'll do something like this. If an array index of index, I've got an index from outside, is larger or equal to 0, go ahead, sampler, and get the kick and start the kick. And let's put some numbers here. For example, if the index is 0 or 2 or 8 or 10, and let's do the same thing but for the snare. But instead of those index, let's use different numbers. Where is key? Yeah, but Uncle State doesn't do like this. Uncle State do like, because Uncle State is cool. And listen up, now I can live code some beats because I'm evaluating my code. So let's do a sampler get hi-hat start. This is just like two, and then you add a. So let's see what we've got here, alright? So we took some basic coding skill and we were able to produce a beat. We don't know how those sounds are made, but we've got plenty of resources. We can sample sounds from all around, make a sequence, and then we end up with code that looks something like this. Now, we wrote some conditional code. So instead of doing this, and this is a real software for a real client, this is an application that does yo and yay for an Irish company. We do this. Alright? Now, we can take it a step further. We can create some effects using chain function calls, like the code snippet that you see right there. Create a, like we created the volume, we create some reverb, we can create some different setting of volumes and just connect our sampler to a specific effect and do some manipulation on how the sounds sound like. If we don't have any sounds, we can come up with our own sounds. We can generate audio signals by ourselves. And this is the second most important tool of the electronic music producer. And I'm going to show you how it works once I'll be able to stop this. Yeah. So, if we need to generate some sounds from nowhere, I can synthesize synthetic sounds, creating a synthesizer, and connect it to the volume. And then I can go ahead and create some chords, some sounds that I want to play. Look at how it looks like. It's an array that's two-dimensional array. So if I take everything that we did and just go back to the index.html, for example, and let's put values right here like this, the same manipulation as before, some if statements, all right? I can play sounds. This is a very progressive genre in music. This is what's going on today, kids, at the clubs where I'm hanging out. Alright, let's sum it up. So, basically, we took some coding skills, we created some arrays, we looped over them, we used samples, we set some variables, we used basic coding skill, and all we need to do is the same thing that we're doing every day, manipulate arrays. So we end up with something that looks like this, array of arrays. Now this is cool because this is code. So if we take this and build a front end for it, it's probably going to look something like this, an array of array. So if I take whatever I did and just make a UI out of this like this one, I can get visual, and it's going to be much easier for me to Alright, you get it. So wait a second, so with my coding skill, with your coding skill, you can produce a beat. Look at this UI. You know what? I wish that someone would create this UI for me. And guess what? This is out there. And now that you look at this and you see just arrays of arrays, go to the Nir music shop, get one of these, and then, almost, and then you can create music. Because it's array of arrays. Don't be afraid of this instrument, people. Thank you very much. Woo. Come and talk with me later. For every person who come and talk with the uncle, I'm gonna give you a free copy of my book and my other book. I'll be at the lobby as part of my new service. Find me out, make music, people. Stay fresh.
Thank you. Thank you.